Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to California Black Women's Collective Empowerment Institute, the Beauty of Black Women's Initiative. Having her say, the standards of beauty and impact on Black women and girls. We are elated that you guys are here today to learn about different research, to have an intimate conversation in safe spaces with an amazing set of panelists, and just a really great time. Thank you so much for being here. We hope you enjoy this conversation.
Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon. Hopefully, everyone has joined, but we'll give it a couple of seconds to let a couple of other people in. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here today. I am Kelly Todd Griffin, President and CEO of the California Black Women's Collective Empowerment Institute. So we're going to go on to get started. We will, next slide, please. So just a little bit about who we are. So we are the California Black Women's Collective Empowerment Institute, and we have been around since 2022. We're a 501c that is focused on improving the lives of Black women and girls with the emphasis on social and economic mobility. We serve as the manager of the California Black Women's Think Tank. It is the first think tank in the country exclusively doing research on the lives of Black women and girls in California. So thank you for joining us. We're looking forward to this wonderful conversation. Next slide. Next slide. We've decided that we have an initiative called Protect Black Women and Girls. And in our conversations with many of you who are in attendance today, we realized that one of the issues that kept coming up was the Beauty of Black Women initiative, that we recognized that that was a problem, the beauty standards of today's society, and how that is perceived as violence against Black women. And so we wanted to have a little bit more conversation about it. Then we created this initiative led by Dr. Astrid Williams, and you'll be hearing from her soon. But just a little bit about the initiative. Next slide. The initiative is a multi-phase initiative designed to celebrate and uplift and redefine beauty, strength, and resilience of Black women. We do that from 4 objectives: empowering representation, educational outreach, storytelling and legacy building, and research and policy. And again, Dr. Williams will go through this in a little more detail. Next slide. And these are various components of the campaign. We wanted to do a visual series, narrative platform called Having Her Say, which is why we're here today. Different initiatives like art institutions, social media campaigns, our summit, and then our anchor of what we do in a think tank is research. Next. And our expected outcomes is to increase awareness and appreciation of diversity within the Black beauty industry, empower and community build among Black women and girls, positive shifts in societal perceptions and media portrayals of Black women, and the creation of educational resources to use in schools, organizations, and community programs. And so before we do anything, we always want to anchor on the data. So we want to tell the story a little bit. So our latest report, Invisible Labor and Invisible Struggles, looked at the most pressing issues impacting Black women in California, showing physical identity has an impact. We surveyed 452 Black women in California, and these are just some of the statements that some of the folks that participated said. My facial features and the way that I dress is an issue in the workplace, which is a 29-year-old who works in government in San Francisco. Another said They face discrimination from female supervisors and coworkers for unwanted toxic male attention, also in San Francisco. And then we also had someone in Los Angeles say, I work at an airport and experience discrimination based on sex and skin tone by passengers. They dismissed my authority out of Los Angeles. But let's go a little deeper in some of the research. So we asked the participants over the last 12 months, have you experienced racism and discrimination in any of the following places? And work, 56% said that work was the top issue top place where they experienced discrimination, and also in shopping. They said they also experienced. So those are the top two issues, top two environments where they've experienced discrimination. Next slide, please. Then we also have at the bottom, you can't quite see it, but at the bottom, this is skin tone, shows that race, ethnicity, and skin tone were top characteristics for workplace discrimination among surveyed Black women when thinking about the workplace. And you can see there's age, there's hair, weight, gender and gender identity, sexual orientation, and level of education. And so race and ethnicity has a whopping 48%, which is nearly half of those that we surveyed said that they felt that there was discrimination based on their race. And then 35%, so nearly 1 in 3, are saying that they have experienced discrimination based on their skin tone. And then we also wanted to look at the data and crosstab the data around women with children. And we saw that mothers with children under the age of 18, women between the age of 34 and 44 reported higher rates of discrimination across all characteristics: race, skin tone, the way they wear their hair, their body type, their gender, sexual orientation, and level of education as well. And then this is just some other breakdowns based on the age band. So 18 to 24, 25 to 34, 35 to 44, 45 to 55, 54, 55 to 64, and 65 above. And this was all of the characteristics again, and you can see where the darker pink are over indexed. And you see that the 34 to 44 had more of the over indexed than any other group. And then 70% surveyed, the audience has experienced microaggressions in the workplace. You can see that they've experienced some or witnessed microaggressions, or they have experienced exclusionary, intimidating offense, and hostile behavior within the current workplace. You can see a whopping 68% that said yes, and 42% that said yes. The bottom line of this, we had a lot of discoveries in this survey, but one of the things that we recognize is that the beauty standards have a violent impact on Black women, even when they are on the clock. So our survey Black women experience workplace discrimination based on their physical attributes, including their complexion, body, and hair. Characteristics such as hair, complexion, and body relate to both Blackness and womanhood, the intersectionality. The form of discrimination rooted in harmful stereotypes allows space for microaggression and exclusionary behavior to happen in a workplace toward Black women in California and beyond. So now we want to bring in some of the experts to really dig a little deeper in this discussion. So we pulled together a phenomenal panel that we will talk about. And so first, let me start with bringing in Dr. Mira Safir. Dr. Safir. Dr. Safir is an assistant professor of child and adolescent studies at Cal State University Fullerton. And so we'll give her a chance to talk a little bit about her experience. And then we'll bring in our sister friend, Cheryl Bradford. Cheryl Bradford is an NAACP Image Award nominee for Dark Girls and a Boston native who holds both her Bachelor's of Fine Arts from NYU's TSOA and a Master's of Fine Art in Producing at the American Film Institute. Bringing her up. And then we'll bring in Dr. Ajua Asamoah, who is our Queen of the Crown Act. And really, this is it's exciting to have her on the panel today because, if you know California Black Women Collective, you know Holly Mitchell is one of our anchor supporters. And she worked with Dr. Asamoah on having California being the first state to put the Crown Act into place. And then our very own Dr. Astrid Williams. There you guys are. Hi. Hi. You can see my artwork in the back. Just keep popping through. All right, ladies. So let's first start. Let's ask a little bit about yourself, and why was it important for you guys to join this conversation? So let's start with Dr. Safir.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Amira Safir, as Kelly mentioned. And this conversation is incredibly important to me. So what brings me to this topic, my passion for this topic, I'm passionate about all things Black. And as a professor and researcher, I study Black identity development for Black children. I'm interested in understanding how to create safe spaces for Black kids to thrive and be themselves and learn. And thinking about Black girls and how we can create spaces that affirm them. This is exactly where I want to be. I also, part of my research is part of the Black Barbie documentary that's on Netflix, which actually just won an NAACP Image Award. Yay, woo woo. And that documentary, and amongst other things, it looks at these Black women who are at the helm of bringing Black Barbie to us. But we also think about, in my role in it, was thinking about how Black dolls impact Black kids and how they think about themselves. So I feel like this is the perfect conversation for that, where we're thinking about how Black girls are seeing themselves in the media and the place that they spend their time. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for including me.
Yes. All right, Miss Cheryl.
Hey, everybody. And I'm not from Boston. I'm from the other one. Even my cup says it. Please, I'm from Beemore. So we got to get to Baltimore. It's not Boston. All right. Because I'll touch you. I'm here because if we talk about racism, we have got to talk about colorism. We have to. There's no way around it. And I think that in a lot of cases, we, even as a community, because it's a hard conversation to have, don't want to talk about it. But it's like being in a boat and you're bailing out water, but you still got a big old hole in it, right? Those conversations have got to go hand in hand. And by the way, I know the filmmaker for your movie. And yeah, we're actually, I know her. So that's why I'm here. I'm also the founder of Women of Color Unite. We're the largest nonprofit of women of color in entertainment. And everything we do has to do with intersectionality. And colorism and those with a disability are at the forefront of everything that we do.
Awesome. Dr. Asamoah. There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
By now, we have this under control, but technology is not my area of expertise. So you have
Listen, girl, you have no idea.
First, let me just say thank you for having me join this dynamic group of sisters who are doing the work that we know needs to be done. Again, I am Dr. Ajua B. Asamoah, and I am excited to be here with you all to have this critically important conversation. What brings me to this work? I am the daughter of two activists and have parents who sort of have always been involved in the movement. And so having been at, my first rally at the age of 2 with a mom born here in the deep South and a father born on the continent in what would become the Republic of Ghana, I learned very early on that anti-Blackness was a global sentiment. And so I have spent my entire life working to move us forward as a collective. I am a recovering African-American psychology professor, but am really focused on liberation policy, and the Crown Act is just one example of the types of policies that I've been championing nationwide. So again, it's great to be with you all, and I look forward to having this conversation with you, sisters.
Awesome. 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 I'm still here. Dr. Astrid Williams.
Yes, thank you, Kelly, for having us here. I would say what brings me to the conversation is I'm very passionate about the issue of Black women and diversity and how we can be able to represent and improving the representation to make it more positive and also imparting education and knowledge. I come with 20 years of experience in working in public health, but also being able to shift that across to, see how we can make meaningful changes in the industry. And so really excited about this conversation that we're going to have here today.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Dr. Safir, what are some of the most harmful messages Black girls receive about beauty, and how can we counteract them?
That's a great question. I think so. We know that we have these Eurocentric beauty standards that Black girls and women exist in. And so it's hard to quantify what the most harmful messages are because it's so important for us to be able to see ourselves in the spaces that we're in and feel confident. And so but when I think about the most harmful ones, I think they're the ones that undermine who we are as people and our abilities. So a lot of times we kind of conflate what we look like with what we can do. So if I go to a job interview and I have straight hair versus curly hair, how am I being perceived? And I think that Black women and girls are really subjected to those ideas and are constantly trying to kind of contrive ourselves into finding ways to show up in ways that make other people perceive us as being capable. And so I think that as we're thinking about being able to facilitate the overall well-being of Black women and girls, I think those messages that really undermine who we are as people and what we're able to do are among the most harmful, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Cheryl, in your experience with dark girls, what are some of the most eye-opening stories about colorism and its impact on Black women's self-image?
It's the kids. It's the kids. Having made the documentary, obviously a lot of time I'm not emotional, right? But every time I see that little dark-skinned girl at the end who is beautiful, and her mother is telling the story of how she wishes that she had lighter skin, how she doesn't think that she's pretty, all of those things, like they hurt me someplace ancestral. That's the only way that I can put it. Like, it hurts somewhere so deep in me, like it resonates throughout the generations. That is the part. And the extremes, taking bath in bleach, like it's the extremes of it, and to see it happening generation after generation after generation, that's the most difficult part. Every time I watch the documentary, and it's 14 years old and it's still as relevant today.
That part. I was going to say that this wasn't something that was just made. This is, even to Dr. Safir's work on Black Barbie, that was the same research that was done years ago, and replicating it to see a similar reaction was just, I think that's brought you to tears. Like, you just can't believe we haven't got past it. And Dr. Asamoah, the Crown Act I always believe that policy impacts are every part of our lives, whether it's local, state, federal. And I know you have so much experience even at the federal government. But to get the Crown Act, like, what made that so important? And not even to just get it here in California, because you went into states that aren't considered progressive states, right? You went into the Texases and pushed it with the kind of legislators that don't even see us the way we need to be seen. So how was that, and what was like the strategy around that?
So, thank you for that question. I have worked at the intersection of policy and politics for decades. I have, some would argue, mastered the politics of policymaking. And again, sort of policy is my love language. I need to acknowledge the other three women who I met in 2018 at Essence Festival, who they were talking about this long-standing and problematic practice of race-based hair discrimination and what might be the best way to challenge it. And given my background, again, having worked in local, state, and federal government, talked about the need to tackle this legislatively. We know that changing policy doesn't necessarily change hearts and minds, but we definitely needed a legislative fix because, and I'll spare you all from going into my dissertation topic because this is also my area of research, but what we found was that the courts had declared hair was not a racial characteristic. And in doing so, that statutory protection that is extended to the classification of race wasn't necessarily extended to hair. And so it was critically important to go in and add that statutory protection. In terms of the legislative strategy, because I developed that, social impact and coalition building strategies nationwide, I should acknowledge there's a dope sister named Orlena Wonka Blanchard, and she also developed the marketing strategy. And so when you're talking about building public policy campaigns, there are a number of different components. I worked with a dynamic team of lawyers in California in particular. When I chose Holly Mitchell to be the person to champion in that state, I had tagged, different people in different states. There was a Black woman, and her last name escapes me, but her first name is Leah, and she was the lobbyist in the state. So it is a very people-powered movement, largely with a small but mighty team of Black women. But in terms of leading the effort nationwide, my job is to push for policies that protect Black people independent of who is holding what office. And so there was no way that I would say, oh, let's just stop in California and New York, because we had them introduced. California was first to introduce it. New York was actually the first to pass it, but we'll just always acknowledge Senator Mitchell and Assemblywoman Tremaine Wright, because she was the first one to introduce it. And even her scheduler was the person who came up with the acronym in terms of CROWN. That wasn't, I was, focused on the policy, but even her scheduler was involved in terms of, like everybody contributing to this sort of nationwide strategy, but going into states that people did not necessarily think the CROWN Act was possible in terms of passage. It requires coalition building. And I'd worked and called friends that I'd worked with wearing different hats, who were the leaders of national organizations, but who, we could activate locally. So in terms of going in a place like Texas, two dynamic champions there, just like former Senator Holly Mitchell, I have Representative Retta Bowers, Senator Miles, just dynamic people nationwide, because while I can champion the movement, I am not a lawmaker, and we need partners to do it. So it really relies on the passage of it relies on building strong coalitions.
Yeah, awesome. That is so true, especially even in California, coalition building is critical. Dr. Williams, so we brought you on to champion this work around Black beauty from the lens of violence. And so, why was that important for us to look at it from that lens versus just look at it from like a corporate lens of, oh, we need to change, what corporate is doing and what instead of that?
Yes, well, thank you so much, Kelly, for having us here and having this opportunity to have her say, using it as a platform to have meaningful conversations, to discuss this important issue. And you mentioned a great point about corporate accountability. It's often performative, and it's something that, they want to check the box. But as you saw in the previous data that you reported, it's still an issue. It still remains to be an issue when Black women or people of color are, showing up on the job and they feel that they're discriminated. And it could be microaggressions, something that's so minute or it can be something that's just bold, like, can I touch your hair? Or, not being, advanced in your position after, having the skills and the talents for that. And so we created this, this initiative through the California Black Women's Collective to be able to look at the representation across beauty, media, and culture. And it's so important to be able to have these discussions, reclaiming the narrative. And so not letting mainstream, larger America or corporate America be able to tell us, who we are, how we should look, and to define us. And so really redefining that. Yet too often these images or stereotypes, can be negative. And also it's violent because of the mental health aspects. It can be psychological. And it looks like, having, low self-worth or self-esteem in there. And so looking at not only the physical impacts, but also the health impacts, and also the economics as well. Looking at it, if you can't be gainfully employed, then how does that look like in terms of your family? And as we know, a lot of times, women are the ones that are, supporting the family, whether that be, mainstream in terms of, large, financial, but also at home. And so if the mother is not educated and, has a lack of self-worth, does that trickle down to the children that she's bearing? And it, continues and it perpetuates that. And so it's a very big initiative that we're taking on. And so, happy that we're having our say in this discussion.
Awesome, Watson. Dr. Asamoah, I saw you make some faces. So what were you thinking when you heard?
So I was thinking about the current climate. Candidly, in another life that ended at 11:59 on January 20th, my tenure ended, I should say, as the first and only woman to ever serve as a senior advisor for racial equity to a U.S. secretary. And we are watching right now the collapse of not just infrastructure and systems and things that essentially constitute a democracy, but we are watching capitulation from some of the same corporate leaders who pledged to advance racial equity, who said they cared about Black women and they would, support our work, including the Crown Act. And so I was just responding in terms of my facial reaction. I was responding to what Doc was sharing about corporate America is tricky. You touched on it, Doc. Talking about the economic impact. Obviously, there's that as it relates to the Crown Act. We know that there is an undeniable correlation between the use of chemical relaxers and the increased likelihood of developing uterine fibroids. Same holds true for uterine cancers. We're talking about the psychological impact of essentially being told that the way that you were born is not okay. That is problematic. It causes issues in, all sorts of relationships, including our interpersonal relationships. It creates, challenging, we'll say, environment for our children to learn in. But as Doc shared, essentially, what does it mean to have offers of employment rescinded because I choose to wear my hair like this versus naturally curly like I did last week, or in the Senegalese twist that I'll have in 3 weeks, and to have offers of employment rescinded, be passed over for promotions, being told you're not showroom ready, all the things that sisters know. So again, what you saw was my just affirming what Doc was sharing in terms of some of the experiences.
Right. And Dr. Safir, I see you shaking your head too. So, in terms of the fact that, sorry, y'all, I go off the schedule, the script, I just can't. And I designed the question, Dr. Safir, because we're going to have a conversation. In terms of, education is so important. We know through our research that regardless of educational attainment, Black women still fall below their female counterparts when it comes to salaries. How do you feel like, what's happening today, what's happening with defining what DEI looks like and how this relates to beauty? How do you think that this is impacting some of your young students, some of the people that you're actually trying to pour into to say, this is your pathway to success? but you can do this authentically the way you look when you see all the stuff that's happening in society right now?
That's a great question, because it's a particularly difficult time to be an educator, especially so I teach classes on like ethnicity and culture and development, like that tap directly on top of these topics that we're supposed to not be talking about anymore. But what I've been seeing in my class, so I teach college students, what I've been seeing in my classes is a fire in my students and a passion to want to better understand. And I think that the way that I have been approaching it is to talk to them about these topics and kind of emphasize in a new way how we are going to be the keepers of the information. And like, it's important that not only that we, and I hope I'm answering your question. It's important that we not only like create safe spaces and like be examples for Black girls and women, but we help other people create environments of safety as well. So I don't teach all Black students, but I teach all my students how to engage in Black populations and how to be allies and how to, recognize certain types of treatment and how to speak up about it. And they are very receptive to it. And coming into this era of like anti-DEI, I was kind of nervous coming into the semester thinking, am I going to get pushback from my students in a new way? But they are very excited and on fire about it. And that's encouraging to me, because I think it's important that we have to raise awareness even more and put the onus on ourselves to be the example and provide the information that creates these safe spaces, since we know we can't rely on policy at this time.
Yeah. Thank you. And Cheryl, speaking of spaces, the entertainment industry being kind of the biggest culprit of defining our images to the negative. So you were really kind of even behind the camera, and you determine like angles, you determine how we're represented. What have you experienced just even in the last year with all of this happening, with all of the strikes, making sure there's representation, because without people like you behind the camera, the way in which we are presented is going to be subjective to whose eyes is looking through it.
It's been a rough couple of years for the entertainment industry. But I want to go back to answer that, to talk about DEI for a second. So I'm just going to tell you, 2 years ago, we changed DEI on our website because we saw it coming. Dr. Koswala Sane, who is also an educator, she runs Sisters in Education Circle. Dr. Sarah L. Webb, Colorism Healing. Really good friends of mine. Akosa was in charge of our education programs. We saw it coming. So we changed it because we saw basically the bastardization of it. In Hollywood, most of the people who were in charge of it were white women. That was never going to work out well for us. Point blank, period. So we actually changed it to depth of knowledge. And Kosua came up with that. I was having a conversation like, just let's talk about what we normally talk about. And she said, it really is about the depth of knowledge. And I went, that. And that's what we call it, depth of knowledge, because that's really what it is. Right. And I think that Akosa was the first person who actually said to me, erasure is violence. I'm just smart enough to surround myself with people who are much smarter than me. So because of that, and having and knowing it was coming, because you could see it, it was a commodification of DEI, especially in Hollywood, that we've been able to navigate it. Right? Like we didn't really have to change anything. We saw it coming. So that we were prepared for it to a very large extent. So we have our program #StartWith8, which is people in Hollywood take 8 women of color, and all they have to do is one substantial thing for them. One. We ask the women, what do you need? We ask people, what are you willing to give? And we match them. And of course, these relationships continue and so forth and so on, right? And it's more than a mentorship program. It's really getting to know people that you haven't been around. I didn't go to school with any, don't live near any, don't golf near any. And our mentors get as much, the people sign up for it, out of it as the women do. So look, let's face it, content is king and queen because content can change hearts, minds, so forth and so on. If there aren't more of us behind the cameras making those decisions, then you will see a lack of representation. I just want to say one last thing. Last year, I was the producer of the bonus content for Cross. That's another thing. I stick with the ones who brung me. Ben Watkins and I, who is the creator and showrunner of Cross, I produced his short film some years ago. And we've remained friends ever since then. So when he got Cross, he's like, he's like, hey, Cheryl, you want to come produce the bonus content of Cross? Ben is Black. I'm Black. Let me just tell you something. My DP was a Black man. My production designer was a Black woman. My costume designer was a Black woman. My gaffer was a Black guy. Like, people said in 20 to 30 years that they have been in the entertainment industry, that was the very first time that every day they walked on set and someone saw someone who looked like them. So change is possible, but I'm just going to say it's going to have to come from my t-shirt, Black Women Lead. Yes. And men, of course.
Okay.
Well, I'm giving my shout out to Ben because he really knew what he was doing.
I got you. Dr. Williams, when you hear, we talked about the political world, we talk about education, and we also talk about entertainment. How does that fit into our model of what we need to be doing around this initiative when it comes to beauty?
Yeah, so I think the other piece to it is community. And so when you talk about the different industries in there, you have the education system, you have research, you have the entertainment, you have policy and advocacy. So the only other piece that, is missing is the community, and how do we bridge that through education and awareness? And so having platforms like this, as you mentioned earlier, research is really critical because, how do you be able to, tell this story and to be able to support it where people, can see, what the data is and, making meaningful, decisions and choices about that. And so I think, being able to, forge relationships with those out in the community, whether those be in the industry, because we need them too. We need people in corporate. We need all of us to be able to come together. And so with this initiative, we plan to do that. And so there's going to be a variety of different, ways that people can get involved through having, narrative stories. Interviews is very important. So we do want to have a multi-generational campaign starting from, young girls going all the way up. As you can see, if you notice back to the research that was presented, that last column there where it said 65 and plus, and they were still being, discriminated. Ageism is one would say is a thing, but also when you couple that with your skin color, now you're a double whammy. You're not a white woman who's 60 years, and saying that, she's discriminated. Now you got your hair, you got your skin color, you got your age, and all of these are unmodifiable. I don't know if, if you can go in and change these things. And so there's a lot of things that we have to combat with day to day. And so we're looking to see how we can, have conversations around this. So.
Awesome. Recently, there's a sister who up at UC San Francisco that did a survey about negative hashtags. And she looked at all of the hashtags that her and her graduate students did an assessment of hashtags, and they came up. The results was that the Black women have more violent hashtags associated with Black women than any other group. I know I'm butchering her research, but it was something like that. Like hashtags that are considered violent were attributed to Black women more than any other group.
So not surprising. Yes.
Right. So Dr. Safir, the question I have for you is, how do social media, mainstream media influence young Black girls' perception of beauty today?
That's a great question. And it's a complex question, I think, because we have like Eurocentric beauty standards and the violence against Black women, as you mentioned in this research, that definitely comes through on social media, that Black women are susceptible to, so we experience it in our everyday lives, and then we get online and we still experience it. There's like no respite. But at the same time, there's lots of subcommunities and subspaces that create visibility for us online that then also provide that kind of reinforcement for who we are. So I think about things like the natural hair movement, and it kind of starting on YouTube, and people being like, oh, I wasn't wearing my natural hair before, but now I can go online and see this person with hair like mine and learn how to twist it and style it. And now I feel seen. I think about body type as well, a lot of exposure to different body types and how to dress and feel more confident, and exposure to stories. So people who are experiencing these things, who are navigating the things that we're all navigating, talking about themselves navigating them and the tools they use to overcome. So I think that the social space is complex because at the same time that we are experiencing these negative messages and a lot of, especially right now, vitriol towards Black women, we're also experiencing an overwhelming amount of support from one another and an ability to find community. Even this panel today, I feel like it's a prime example of our ability to be able to connect via social channels.
Yeah, I love it. Like, you know, I'm a little older, so learning the TikTok thing and to see like Hillman talk, that blew me away. Like just all of these, I keep saying, God, we're so brilliant. Like we are just brilliant. And of course it was a Black woman, a group of Black women. And then there was another TikTok thing, and I was like, we're just amazing. So what's next for Dr. Asamoah? What's next for like full protection of Black women hair? What is that? What does that even look like?
So I talked about how the movement is both legislative and cultural. I'm working to shift both at the same time. I will not pretend that although the movement itself in terms of legislation has been bipartisan, with Black women obviously being the ones who championed it most, but I will just acknowledge that because we are inextricably linked as a people, what impacts Black women impacts Black men, children, boys, girls, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll see when I first worked on introducing it at the federal level, there are 2 Black men who I had as the original sponsors, former now Congressman Cedric Richmond and my dear friend, Senator Cory Booker. Those are my 2 champions Richmond is now gone, but those were my 2 original champions in the House and in the Senate. And I did that intentionally, not just because they're 2 of my very best friends, but because they wanted to also acknowledge that we have y'all as well. So it's not just we're out here on our own, but Black men, also experience it. Although, obviously we experience race-based hair discrimination disproportionately, but it was critically important to me and to them to show that this is a community problem and we have to have each other's back. I will not, again, dismiss the fact that policy making is often political. It's even why I work in electoral politics, only because I care about a liberation agenda, which I started talking about in my introduction. You have to have the votes in order to move legislation. There's no way around that. There are things we can do to build pressure campaigns, to, go and build rapport with different lawmakers, to develop talking points, to leverage that national coalition that I talked about. But at the end of the day, in order for something to become law, you have to have the votes. And so you all have probably seen, I am here in DC, but you all have TVs and read and have access to social to acknowledge what is happening here in DC. The overwhelming disdain that some people have who are genuinely hell-bent on turning back the hands of progress legislatively is believable, but I wish that it was not. We are watching people weaponize advanced academic theories. I mean, the number of people who believe critical race theory is everything under the sun is unreal. I mean, Doc Eric knowledge. I'm like, so apples, that's critical race theory too, huh? I mean, like it's the disdain that they have towards us that is so irrational, and the claims about wanting a meritocracy, when that's actually what you're deathly afraid of. Because if in fact we had a meritocracy, then you never go clean your clock. So let's stop playing there. But it is the complete opposite. And having, racial equity be embedded in governance the way we did in the last administration, and to some extent talk about actually advancing real diversity, equity, and inclusion, that gets us closer to the meritocracy. So we know that even though they tout that as their goal, that is not. So I say all of that to say that the political climate is not currently such that there will be, in this moment, I will predict there's not a lot of movement around policy that seeks to ensure everyone's freedom. However, I will not stop until the Crown Act is law of the land. There are other people who are equally committed. I shouted out my two original sponsors, and I need to acknowledge Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, who has been championing the effort in the House since Congressman Richmond has since retired from public life. And collectively, we are committed to ensuring that this becomes the law of the land. So we will be there reintroducing this bill. We've passed it twice in the United States House of Representatives, although the movement in the Senate requires, some fight. But it's the current composition of this Congress that even very basic things that should not be partisan, that should not, require acknowledgement and reminding people that independent of your racial identity or political ideology, you are all responsible for protecting people's civil rights. But to put a button on it, policy is also political, which speaks to the need for us to recognize that there are new ways of doing. And that is what the Crown Act is an example of. It is not birthed in any chamber, in any state legislature. It's something that was developed outside and was brought to lawmakers. Right. And we work collaboratively to move the needle. So we'll not stop until it's passed, but DC is a tough place.
Okay. Listen, I get it. Even in California, it's tough now. So, Cheryl, what barriers still exist in Hollywood for Black women to be authentically represented in different shades and beauty standards?
White people.
Jesus.
I mean, white people. And what I like to call palatable Negroes in Hollywood. Yeah, I said what I said. Look, come
on here, sis. I'm for you. Come on.
I'm like,
go off. Tell them.
My mother was also an activist, right? And so I've never been shy. I've been like this since I was like a kid. So, which is why I'm an independent filmmaker. But no, I mean, seriously, it's look, I have had, and I'm not going to say who it was, but someone at the Screen Actors Guild call me and they're like, hey, our Black actors, this was during right after the pandemic, BLM, who were bringing on their own, specifically hair, makeup, but specifically hair. Those women, normally Black, were being treated like crap by the union hair and makeup people. And they're like, how do we navigate them? And I'm like, you asking me? But seriously, because I've always said it's a union problem, like how many days it takes to get into the unions, the kind of things that you have to work on to get into. It's a very antiquated system still, right? And so, they called me and I'm like, yeah, it's nice. I said, you as the Screen Actors Guild have to put policies in place to protect those women. And by protecting them, you're protecting their hair and makeup people. I said, and here's the other thing. Why don't you just call a thing a thing? If I hire a Black makeup artist, she is going to know how to do everybody. If I hire a Black hairstylist, she gonna know how to do everybody, right? I said, so why don't we call a thing a thing? Like, why are we constantly like going around the bush? So I really think for Hollywood, it's a lot of these practices and are very antiquated, and it's constantly calling it out, right? I mean, that is what I do. That is what Women of Color Unite does, is that we call it out. Do you know that we're the only group in Hollywood ever to have a panel about sizeism and fat phobia, colorism, women of color with disabilities? Like, we're the only one. So, you know, when I am on panels, it's very similar to this in Hollywood. You know, and I hear people who are like, we're going to do something. I remind them of every panel that I've invited to them, every event I've invited them to where they have said no. And I'm like, so why should anybody believe you? Right. So it's just, look, I am not the person who's ever going to take my foot off the neck of Hollywood. That I think for us, because we don't want revenge, we just want equality. And I've had people say, why are you so hard on white people? I've had Black people in Hollywood say, why? And I'm like, I'm never going to get comfortable with being uncomfortable because that's the only place the change happens. So I'm never going to take my foot off the neck. My foot is very comfortable on the neck. I don't care who's president. I don't care who is governor. I don't care because history tells us how to get through this. For all the people who are like, we're now living under fascism. Black people lived under fascism for 400 years.
Oh. Okay. Love Cheryl. Love Cheryl. So real. So real. Let's go back to Dr. Safier. What interventions and programs have really been like anchors to protect Black women and girls and empower them?
I like this question because it's interesting. So some of the things that we do intuitively as Black people are actually really beneficial for the development of our Black kids. Because one thing that comes to mind, not a particular intervention, but a way of doing things. So there's ethnic racial socialization, how we talk about Blackness, how parents talk about Blackness. And the research on ethnic racial socialization shows that Black parents start socializing their kids around their Blackness at very, very young ages, earlier than a lot of other groups do because of the experiences that we have. But we then see that those experiences then lay a foundation to kind of serve as like a cultural protective mechanism. I'm blanking on the word right now for those experiences. So for example, I'm thinking about the kids in the Black Barbie documentary, and they're looking at these dolls, and they're looking at dolls from diverse backgrounds, but they see the Black dolls on the table, and we ask them, which one looks like you? And the girls are like, this one is so pretty, and she has locks just like me. Or, my mom taught me Black girl magic. My parents told me to be proud of who I am, no matter what people say about me. And those types of messages, that type of support, I think is some of the most, in terms of what we can do, some of the most powerful protectors against these things. It's like creating these counter messages that kind of serve as a buffer against these things once we encounter it in society. And it kind of stays with you. We see it with those young kids, even with the similarities. I guess for those that are familiar with the documentary, that it was kind of like a reimagined version of the doll test from the 1940s, where the kids were given the Black doll and the white doll, and they were asked, which one is kind, which one is bad. And overwhelmingly, the Black kids attributed negative stereotypes to the Black dolls and positive stereotypes to the white dolls. And so for many people, after they saw the documentary, after we kind of redid this with a group of mostly Black kids, mostly Black girls, and they were playing with the dolls and were asking those questions too, a lot of people saw it and thought, oh, have we made any progress? Because these kids are still seeing, whiteness as the standard. But how I saw it is that even though they can understand that, even though they can understand at some level white supremacy, right? They're seeing, this society values whiteness more than it values Blackness. They also see themselves and see those positive messages that their parents said about them. So I think that those types of interventions where we're actively equipping them with the ideas and messages that they need to see things in a different way are some of the most powerful interventions that we can use.
Yeah, I thought also what was interesting is that you guys had such a different variety of dolls than back when the original research was done, right? So you were able to have different dolls that had different hair textures, that had different sizes. That I thought was really interesting, that they still attributed some of the negative characteristics to the Black dolls or the more ethnic dolls, and then to the white.
And it goes to show how complex this is, right? Like a lot of times we think of it as like a Black and white issue, but we're in a very diverse society, whether folks like it or not. And even in the context of the diversity, there is a hierarchy to this, right? And like in the hierarchy of power and privilege, Black people are at the bottom, and kids are noticing that. But we see these glimmers of the way these interventions can kind of help to mitigate that for them. And it's like, even though I understand this is how society is, this is how I am seeing myself. This is how my parents see me. This is how my friends see me. This is how I see me. And I think that is the critical component, especially right now in our current societal environment.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot. It's
A
going
lot.
to take a lot, because it almost feels like, to Dr. Asamoah's point, is that the perceptions are from before, or from back in the 1940s, of how today is that whole, great thing that we're supposed to be searching for. Dr. Williams, how can individuals and organizations contribute to this conversation and this work?
Yeah, there are many ways, by, aligning with our mission, to be able to protect Black women and girls. Corporate can do that by their dollars, right? And so being able to support campaigns, being able to fund organizations that are doing this work. Also, you can do it by, individuals, fighting at the purse, by votes. And so that's another way. But also, being able to tell one, as we know in the Black culture, reach one, teach one. So as you learn, being able to share that with your family and friends. And so then that they can be able to, have a momentum and share that. But particularly for the California Black Women's Collective, I would say is by, becoming a part of the movement for the Beauty of Black Women initiative. We would love to hear your stories, so we have a very, rapid campaign that we're going to have underway. This is just the beginning of it. This is our launch event. And so being able to, tell inspiring stories. Later on in the presentation today, we want to be able to share that how you can become involved, so we can collect those stories and be able to interview you and be able to highlight those. Because I think it's very critical for the younger generation to see people, that look like them in different, industries. If they want to go into, let's say, STEM careers, that they can see someone, not a white person, right? Not someone on TV, to Cheryl's point, that does not look like them. They can see, I can do that too. So being able to hear those voices, being able to see them, being able to have representation, I think those are some really great ways that we can move this forward.
And Dr. Asamoah, like you said, it's such a different political environment, but I've always felt politics is local. And how you experience your everyday life is more at the local level than at the federal level, although that maybe have changed. But what can people do around just, advocating for how they want to present themselves to the world, without feeling like they have to adhere to certain standards?
So there are a couple different parts to that question, and I'll just try to make sure that I'm answering it in a way that's useful. In terms of how to advocate for yourself, so many people spend so much time and money and energy in convincing us that we have no power. And once you convince people that they have no power, they tend to act accordingly. I talked about how the Crown Act movement is a new way of doing. You, as a individual, are powerful. Obviously, collectively, we are also powerful. To recognize that our lawmakers work for us unless and or until we decide they don't is something that I want everyone watching to recognize. People are there because we sent them there, which means you are there on my behalf. And so it's not the best use of our time to only criticize. Now, sometimes folk need cussing out, and I know exactly who to call now, Sister Cheryl, when I need somebody to, I'm gonna call her. However, it is also our responsibility to show up and to testify, write letters of support, call in, pack hearings when our lawmakers are doing things right. And so that reciprocal relationship is one that should be nurtured, and making yourself available to review policies. It got to the point where a lawmaker would hate to see me coming, because they know that if I thought that it was harmful to Black people, then I was going to organize and I would be at their hearing. I worked to codify the nation's first Office of African American Affairs, and people told me that I couldn't do it. Then they had to deal with 19 panels of 3 people each, including activists, academics, the clergy, 100 Black men, 100 Black women, sororities, fraternities, and they were like, oh, okay. So after seeing me show up so many times to testify, having done the first time when I was 15 years old, 4 decades ago, and to being in a point, at a point where lawmakers recognize, let me just go holler at her on the front end. Do you have anything that you want to contribute? Is there anything you want me to take out of this bill? Because you're going to have to see me in the hearing. So let's just work collaboratively to develop policy. I want for everyone to recognize that that is not just something that only I can do. I know I love to do it, but everybody has that ability. You all have conducted research. Your research should be informing policy. As pracademics, meaning people who are practitioners, but also academics, I personally do not care about research that only 4 other colleagues will read. However, if we think about our research in the context of its practical implication and application, then Doc, whatever you are producing, draft a legal guidance memo. I work with some dynamic attorneys to develop the legal strategy for the chronic, develop that into policy proposals, and then rally the community around you, develop who your folks are, build your coalition strategy, and let's take what we know and what we have to develop policies that will protect us. I know that was only one part of your question, but I want to be mindful and let other sisters weigh in. But I want the key takeaway to be, we are not powerless. I know sometimes it feels that way, and it's because they are so dead set on ensuring that we feel helpless and powerful, but we are not. They work for us unless or until we decide they don't. And most lawmakers want to keep their jobs. So you just remind them that you are such and such from whatever district. I vote consistently, and I want you to do this thing, or meaning vote for, champion, or veto on my behalf.
That's right. That's right. I say that all the time. All right, Miss Cheryl, we're bringing you back in.
Yeah, at your own peril.
Right. But I knew who you were when we booked you. What can organizations like Women of Color United take to ensure lasting change in how Black women are portrayed in the media?
First of all, you're looking at her, right? I love what you just said, because when I started Women of Color Unite, nobody thought we would last. Nobody. And the reason was because, I don't charge my members. Everybody volunteers. And normally people volunteer between 2 and 4 years. And I take it because people believe in it. Well, I have no money. But I don't charge my members, because that is one of the ways they look. We're not born marginalized, right? They push us to the margins economically, beauty standards. We get pushed to the margins. And I realized very, very early on in Hollywood that belonging to a lot of the white female-led nonprofits is that one of the rate is financial. Right? The cost to join, the cost for this event, and you got to pay to be in those rooms a lot of times.
Yeah.
So I decided very early on that I was not going to charge my members for anything. There would never have to be any trauma essays when we have a program. You don't have to prove you are worthy to me. You were born worthy. I don't need po lil me ... Right? Like, you don't have to do any of that. Everything we do is a first come, first serve basis. So if you want, a couple of mentors, you got to wake up in time to put your name in, fill out the form, boom, click, you're done. That's it. I refuse to make people jump through hoops. Right. And so we're just going to continue doing what we're doing. We're still going to Start with Aid. I just want to let everybody know that we just finished securing for the 6th year in a row our partnership with Soho House. For those who don't know, it's a very exclusive place. I bring us up in there because this is what I'm going to do for the next 4 years. I'm going to concentrate on community, peace, and joy. Right? Like that's what Woke You was here for. So we're still going to have all of our networking events and our panels. I got a Black country music night coming up. Kelly, you were invited. Anybody in Los Angeles? Yeah, I mean, that is what we're going to do. And then there's the last thing for me personally, and Kelly knows this. My mother used to say, sometimes you just got to do it your damn self, right? So I'm running for Los Feliz Neighborhood Council District F. Like, why not? They came out and recruited me, asked me, and I was like, all right. Because in everything that is going on, all of the Black women specifically run groups, we will be getting less money. And so I'm going to advocate statewide, county-wise, local-wise for grants and other things to get us into the budget of either the state, the county, or the city of Los Angeles, right? That is how we are going to survive. So I'm just going to keep doing the work, and I'm going to keep being me. And I don't care who's president. I don't care what's going on. And yeah, anybody just hit me up because I will curse somebody out.
Yes, we know. We know. Dr. Oxamoa.
That just, sis, we will talk offline. But at the risk of sounding far less humble than I can be, I'm one of the baddest political strategists there is. And you call me when it's time to make a move, and I will get some sisters. We know how to do mail. We know how to do organizing, door knocking, campaign messaging, media. Political power is where it is.
Yes, it's true. Representation matters. All right. Well, ladies, we want to thank you guys. This has been a wonderful conversation. And I thank you for your time. I know that this is never easy to carve time out because we always have so many balls up in the air. But I want to hand it over to my sister girl here, Miss Karina, who's sitting next to me. So she's about to get into the screen. There she goes right there. And my computer broke down right before this, so she had to give me hers. So Miss Karina.
Yes, I am going to go ahead and do the audience Q&A. So we have 6 questions that came up. The first one here that we have is, I think this one's for you, Cheryl. What do you think Hollywood will look like in the next 4 years?
So earlier when you guys were talking about social media, I'm pretty much I'm off of Twitter, whatever. I hang out on Spottable. It's the app. It's very similar to Twitter. It's owned by a Black man. I love me some Spottable. And what I've been discussing over there, because I have entertainment pods like Twitter Spaces, where I bring in people from the entertainment industry. And one of the things we've been talking about was the fact that what you're going to see is a lot of content for flyover states. That's the way Hollywood likes to put it, right? And the first thing we saw right after the Little House on the Prairie reboot. So what I'm telling people is to support Blue Monday Productions. That is my friend Ben Watkins. His show is Cross right now. He is shooting the pilot for his next show, Ali, based on Muhammad Ali. Support them, support Macro, watch content made by us and for us. That is what we can do to ensure that those who are already making content about us, right, that they can continue to do that. One of the things that I heard about Cross so much, and it was the #1 show in the world, and it was actually Christopher Boozy, the owner of Spottable. He also did Bot Sentinel. He was the one who figured out that Black women were the most targeted online. He tracked it across every country for me. He just did it as a friend because he's into data, right? And I gave it to Ben, who gave it to Aldous Hodge and everybody. Like, this is what we're doing to support each other. So it was the #1 show in the world. Watch it. Right? Oh, what I was going to say is, it was the first time that I heard Black men saying the relationship between those 2 Black men, that friendship, dark-skinned Black men, that they had never seen that before. ever, to continue to support those who are already doing the work so we can have more cross and less Little House on the Prairie. I said what I said, honestly.
No, thank you. We do appreciate that, Cheryl. Thank you so much. The next question that I have can be for anyone can take a jab at this question is what advice would you give to young Black girls struggling with self-esteem due to societal beauty standards?
So this question makes me think about something that came up a bunch of times throughout the conversation, which was the power of representation. Because I think that the first advice I would give to Black girls struggling with self-esteem is to try their best to immerse yourself in spaces that remind you of yourself. Because I think we feel so much pressure to try to figure out how to feel confident on the inside when everything around us is telling us that we should not feel confident or that we're not like that space. But one of the social media is a gift and a curse, but one of the gifts of it is that it allows us access to spaces and places that remind us of ourselves. So we don't have to spend time in places that make us feel less than, or we can limit our time in those spaces and actively choose spaces that remind ourselves that we are important. And that's both anecdotal. I mean, I feel like I'm a Black woman and that's been my experience, and in the research as well. That research, that representation and finding those like spaces, those safe spaces can literally mitigate the negative impact of feeling that discrimination on things like self-esteem and self-confidence, and even like mental health outcomes like anxiety and depression. So I would say try your best to immerse yourself, or try their best to immerse yourself in spaces that remind you of you, and to remember that our value is not completely hinged on our beauty. So people don't have to find us beautiful for us to be valuable. We're valuable for so many other reasons. The beauty goes far beyond that. And so as you find places that remind us of our power and our beauty, we can also find places that remind us of all the other beautiful characteristics that we have that are not even attached to what we look like.
Beautifully said. Did anyone else want to comment on this question?
I think just to add to what Dr. Safir says, just to reaffirm yourself, whether that be through affirmations, but also, your friendships, your sister friends, and being around people who look like you because, you have the similarities. It's so hard when you're trying to assimilate to something that is foreign, something that is not, i.e. in the, Eurocentric, beauty standards. So really, accept your uniqueness. And at the end of the day, who are they all trying to acquire to be like?
I was going to add exactly that. So just to add on to what my sister docs have shared, learn that external validation does not go very far. So to seek internal validation, to recognize that as Dr. Williams shared, these folks are trying to emulate exactly who and what we are. Recognize that you have royalty in your DNA. And when all else fails, go and see yourself and others.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Osimo and Dr. Williams.
I just want to say that sometimes with family, because a lot of times the first place we see colorism, your cousins, grandma gives somebody else a slice of cake, something like that. It is okay to say, as Dr. Cheryl Grill says in Dark Girls, I'm good, you keep that. When someone wants to tell you that you're pretty, even though, no, I'm good, you keep that, right? You don't have, here's the thing. I really am not about respectability politics. I never have been. And it is okay even to tell your family member to stop them mid-sentence before it can get into your head that you're good. They can keep that. So that's what I want to say, because a lot of times the first place we feel colorism is within our own families.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, I have, how can we better support and amplify Black-owned beauty brands and businesses?
Well, now is a great time. As we know, during COVID, a lot of us who are at home, we became our own beautician. And so going online, finding out research, we are in an avid where, anything is Googleable. And so, being online, social media platforms, but seeing, what is out there, but a key to it would be knowing what works for you. So if you have a particular hair texture or hair pattern, buy to that, or, either, try to play up that, don't try to, conform something, that you're, not able to do. But I think the best way is, going online, doing your research. There's so many brands out there, so many indie brands, but also buying from us and supporting those Black brands, putting the dollars, into them, because if not, then they're not going to be there. And then we're not going to have those, resources, knowing where we can go to be able to buy these products. And so I would just say, trying to, seek out, what works best for you.
I would only add to leverage the power of the purse, meaning recognizing our buying power. We spend a lot of money, and being intentional about brands that we use is obviously one of those key ways to advance our economic freedom. But we're also in a point now where people are actively boycotting and intentionally boycotting some of the entities that we've seen some of the capitulation around, even though we're watching companies, abandon their alleged racial equity, diversity, other types of equity and inclusion goals to their own detriment. Because I think about one particular box store and big box store, and they have lost money in terms of, the price of their stocks have gone down, all because you were capitulating, and the people who are mad about it are not even your consumers. Mm-hmm. So you're mad, and it's just like, I'll just say it. Those are Walmart shoppers, not Target. You're gonna lose your people because you want to, placate to some of these other. It doesn't make any sense. So go and spend your money with people who would actually serve you. That's what they used to say in the old days. Don't go spend your money anywhere where you couldn't be served. And so being intentional about that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, and it works. Target is being sued by their stakeholders because they were like, you misinformed us when you said you were going to get rid of DEI, that it wouldn't affect us. Do you not know how much money we spend?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All of that. It works. It absolutely works. I don't remember the last time I went into Target. Like okay, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. And that's the other thing, community. And I really want people to understand, as Dr. Kosel is saying, always says, that our community was born in the bowels of slave ships. We didn't speak the same language. Sometimes we were warring tribes. And we took care of each other. That is who we are. And we always do better when we remember that and not try to get away from it.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Spirit, did you want to add to that?
No, I think it was captured well. Everything I was thinking, y'all hit it. So yeah, no, I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. Okay, I have one more question. Why is it so important to challenge and redefine beauty standards for Black women today?
Go, Doc. I defer to you.
I think it's because this is why we're having the conversation here today, is because it can be very defeating, when you're told that you're not pretty or that you are not able to, get a certain position. Dr. Asamoah was saying offers rescinded. It's just so many things that, in society that are negative that we're faced with, so I would say the reason why that we're having these conversations is to be able to, have a dialogue, among, our sister friends, our colleagues, to say that we're not the problem, we're not the issue, it's society.
100%. And we deserve to feel safe and free to exist, and to have one less thing to worry about. Like, for Black women to be among the most educated, the most qualified, the most capable of doing just about anything, for us to have to constantly be having this internal battle of, am I pretty? Am I being perceived well? What are people thinking about me? We just don't deserve to continue to have that experience for us to be as qualified and as work as hard as we do. So I think that is one of the reasons why the standards need to change. And shifting a little bit from the question in terms of like how to change the standard, I think we have to keep on showing up as ourselves and see that as a radical act. first understanding the standards that we're pushing up against, and then understanding how our presence pushes back on them. I've had some pretty powerful experiences in the classroom. I remember the very first college class I taught, it was at Cal State Northridge. And here I am, a plus size Black woman coming in to teach the class. And I had a student after class who was like, I have never had a professor that looked like me teach a class before. And for the rest of the semester, she was locked in. She was like, I'm not usually this on my classes, but this means a lot to me. And it's everything from like the way you dress, the decision to wear the braids or whatever the hairstyle might be, just showing up as ourselves. It goes a very long way. It sounds simple, but it goes so far.
I'll note, I talked about how we're inextricably linked, and that is because that is the African way. And I shared at the top that I identify as a continental African, Black and other things as well. But individualism is the Eurocentric way. Collectivism is the African-centered way. And recognizing that we are, in fact, in community with each other then becomes our goal to make sure that we are all okay. So I know that we're here talking about Black women, and that's because we are all committed as Black women to ensuring that we're not just surviving, but also thriving. But I also want to acknowledge that our children are depending on us to be able to create a better world for them. So whether you are, protecting and preserving your right to rock an afro, a blowout, twist out, which is my go-to favorite. That is important because we're seeing our kids have negative educational experiences. So yes, we are experiencing in the workplace, but the schools are both the workplace and an environment where our children are supposed to be able to thrive. And as I think about the work that I've done at the local, state, and federal levels, I think about a Faith Finity who was sent home in tears because she was rocking beautiful box braids that were deemed a violation of school rules. I think about my nephew's son, Daryl George in Texas, who for a full year was essentially criminalized, kept in school detention, not able to have hot lunch, not interacting with his peers, not having a chair with a back to it, even eating hot lunch, and was essentially in isolation because he rocked locks. I think about the Cook twins, 2 Black girls, Massachusetts, repeatedly punished for rocking braids. But I also think about Andrew in New Jersey, who was forced to make a decision nobody should have to make, certainly no child. And that was to decide whether to forfeit a match he had earned the right to participate in, or to have his locks cut on the spot by somebody with no regard for them. And to have to make that kind of decision as a child with everyone around him, sort of egging him on, failing him, in my view, we cannot have our children in these hostile environments where everything about them is wrong, including the way they come out of the womb and the way their hair grows naturally out of their head, should they decide to rock it naturally in alignment with their racial identity, or rock a blowout if you want, or again, lock it, braid it, twist it, put it in Bantu knots, do what you want to do with it because it's yours. And I want to ensure that our people are able to embrace the full versatility of their hair should they want to, but I sure enough don't want our kids going into these environments that are telling them that they are wrong.
First of all, preach. Thank you for taking me to church on Thursday. I love it. Thank you. Also, it is important because of the fact that it is freeing when you don't have to think about that. So my mother did something really interesting when I was a kid. I was a fat kid. Actually, I've been up and down the scale. I just use fat as a descriptor. Like I was, sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. Like I don't, right. But I was a child model for Lane Bryant. So I would tell people, when people because when you fat and dark skin walking down the street, people think that they can say anything to you. Like you just have to take it. And so I've had people be like, "You're fat." I'm like, "Mm-hmm." "You're pretty." "Mm-hmm." I don't react to any of it. Why? Because I grew up knowing 2 things. Number 1, I have a scale. I know I'm fat. Number 2, I got a mirror. I know I'm pretty. My What I look like has nothing to do with my self-esteem. And it is so freeing. And that's what I want for little Black girls. For that, it does not affect me at all. That is not how you get to me. My self-esteem has nothing to do with the way that I look. Absolutely nothing. I don't care what white people think about where I'm wearing my hair, what I'm rocking, whatever. I don't care what men think. I don't give a you know what. I don't care. And it is so freeing. Now that I am 58, I know Black don't crack, but now that I'm 58, now I'm hearing like, isn't that skirt a little short for you? No. If I want to have my ass cheeks hanging out, they will. I don't care. And because I don't care, it is so freeing. And that is what I want, because I did not realize because I went to predominantly white schools my entire life, until I started hanging out in more and more Black spaces, how burdensome it is to always not to take in what the white says, right? Because that's what we're talking about, right? And what I want for our people is our people also to just shut up when it comes to what somebody is wearing. I don't care. I don't care what another Black woman is wearing. What she's wearing has nothing to do with me. It ain't my business, not my circus, not my monkey. I don't care. Right. And I also want us to get away from that, from thinking the fact of if somebody is wearing something that you wouldn't wear, that you think is too revealing, she has nothing to do with you. And if a white person is going to take her and put that on you, that's a them problem. That's not a you problem. And it sure as hell isn't her problem.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Cheryl. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Safir. Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you, Dr. Asamoah. We really do appreciate you being a part of this Beauty of Black Women initiative as part of our Protect Black Women and Girls. So we really thank you for your conversations. We thank you for just your compassion. We really do appreciate it and value every part of it. We are going to thank you. We're now going to go to next step. And if I can have the next slide, please. Thank you all so very much. All right, thank you so much. So we have our call to action, which we really would like to celebrate Black beauty. We want to make sure that you share your story with us, share your journey and your authentic self. And that way you can do that by posting a photo or a video using the Beauty of Black Women hashtag. You also can, sorry, just changing gears here. I want to be sure I can see. For the world to see your brilliance. Just wanted to give that note. Then we also want you to join the conversation. We're going to drop a couple links in the chat for you to join the conversation by attending one of our empowering workshops, panels, and discussions to break stereotypes and redefine beauty on your terms. So we would like for you to sign up today. Then we also want to amplify our legacy. Help us to collect and share the powerful stories of Black women across generations. Submit your story or nominate someone whose journey inspires you. Those two links will be dropped in the link and also shared with you via email as a follow-up to this conversation. We also want to remind you to be the change. Advocate for authentic representation in media and society. Support our campaign by volunteering, donating, or partnering with us to uplift Black women everywhere. And then also to educate and empower. Bring our educational outreach programs to your school, organization, or community. Let's reshape the narrative and celebrate the beauty of Black women together. All right, next slide, please. Perfect. Yay, our favorite part. We want to hear from you. So we're going to leave this slide up for a little bit. If you can scan the QR code, We would love to hear your thoughts. We will follow up with the survey after this call because we really want to hear your thoughts, any recommendations, any other topics that you want to hear around the Beauty of Black Women initiative. So we'll leave this up for about a couple seconds. Thank you, Rhonda. We see your comment. And thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Nicole Bryan. Thank you, Rashana. Thank you, Nani Jolie. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We have Berta Ritchie, Mallory Lakaya, and Love Bella. Thank you all so much for joining the conversation today. We can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. We appreciate you. Please be sure to follow us so that you can be a part of more of these conversations, and we look forward to hosting you again in the future.